commencing a little later than anticipated. There is a technical glitch with one of the commissioners being able to connect in. But just so this is on the record, clearly this is being recorded, and should the commissioner not be able to get on for a few more moments, she'll be able to view the proceedings anyway. So we're here today to deliberate and hear appeals to the Western Bay of Plenty's process that it's gone through in terms of its considerations for representation. Really, really important process, and the Commission has the responsibility at the end of the day to make definitive decisions based on the information that's presented to it. So to commence proceedings, I would like to open with the Commission karakia. We'll then introduce the Commissioners and team, and then we'll pass over to you, Mayor James, for your introductions, and then you'll just go straight in to your presentation, and then I'll give you some other information after that. But let's open up with karakia. So whakataka tahau ki te uru, whakataka tahau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, ki hi ati ana te atakura, he teo, he huka, he heihu, tihei Māori ora.
Māori ora.
So just before I go into the introduction of the commissioners, maybe there's just a couple of additional observations to make. Clearly we're all working remote. So we're on various screens around the country and beyond. I always make this observation: if you see the commissioner's heads down, it's not because we've fallen asleep, it's we're taking notes. I just don't want people to think we're not interested, because obviously doing it this way is a little challenging. Some of us have various extra bits of technology that we use to make sure that we don't miss anything. So be very assured that we are incredibly attentive to this process. I do, though, want to just read out a statement before we go any further. What was that?
Can you please mute yourself? We're getting background noise from you.
Okay, so so the observation that I'm going to make is based on us reading the appellant's submission. So, and I want to read it out. So some appeals and objections raise issues regarding the processes Western Bay of Plenty Council has followed. The Commission cannot base its determination on matters of process. We must make decisions following the criteria of the Local Electoral Act and the information and evidence before us that is relevant to those criteria. Similarly, the Commission cannot make determinations about conflicts of interest. The Commission cannot determine whether or not a council has a Māori ward. This has already been decided. In the case of this hearing, we're making a determination in relation to the representation of the council, including the number and structure of community boards. The issues that we must determine in this case are the number of community boards and their subdivisions, the names and boundaries of community boards and subdivisions, and how many are elected. We ask that all parties keep their presentations focused on matters that the Commission can determine. And we also ask that all parties recognise that this is a process in which we must all be respectful. Personal, racist or derogatory comments simply will not be tolerated. So I just want to read that out calmly and carefully so we get a sense of what is important around this process. And now, having done that, our fellow commissioners, Commissioner Bulls managed to get online, which is fantastic. So I'm now going to ask the commissioners to introduce themselves. Then we'll go to the team, and as I've said earlier, then we'll pass over to you, Mayor James. So Commissioner Biggar, might be easier if you start with your introduction, then we'll go to Commissioner Bull, and then I'll introduce myself.
Kia ora tātou, can you hear me? Ka pai. Ko tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi o te wā ki o koutou, ko Bonita Biggar Mahau, tētahi uri o Ngāruahine me Te Atiawa, I am Bonita Bigham. I reside from I'm from Taranaki. I'm a descendant of the Maunga. My iwi and Ngāruahine in Te Atiawa, and I am a current regional councillor on the Taranaki Regional Council in the Māori ward there. I'm a former 3-term councillor at South Taranaki District, as well as a 1-term community board member in South Taranaki. Also been heavily involved with Local Government New Zealand, sitting on National Council as Te Maruata's chair for many years. And Te Maruata is the national collective of Māori in elected and appointed positions within local government. So thank you for allowing us to be with you today. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Commissioner Ball.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for the opportunity. I've been a long time in local government in various roles, including chair of the Auckland Regional Council, and I was on the commission previously. Delighted to be back. I'm a companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit, which was awarded to me for services to local government, and delighted to be back. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Commissioner Ball. And my name is Brendan Duffy. I have the responsibility as chair of the commission, and like others, been around local government for quite some years, 7 terms on the Horowhenua District Council, 12 years as mayor, National Council roles, and also chair the DHB for a term, and now back in this role and been on the commission for the last 6 or 7 years. So moving over to you now. Oh, sorry, no, my team, far more important. We better hear from the commission team, and they'll introduce themselves, and we'll start with our CEO, Penny, and then we'll just go through the team from there.
Thank you, Brendan. Kia ora koutou. I'm Penny Langley. I, as Brendan has said, am the Chief Executive of the Local Government Commission, here to support our commissioners, and I will leave my team to introduce themselves, and we'll start with Courtney.
Koutou, ko Courtney Hayward-Aho. I am a Senior Advisor at the Local Government Commission and have been the Lead Advisor for the Western Bay of Plenty Representation Review. Donald, you must be next.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Donald Reeserbos. I'm Principal Advisor with the Commission, assisting today.
Koutou, I'm Ali Manning. I'm a Project Administrator with the LGC, and I'm running the tech today.
Rightio. Well, that's our side of the proceedings, Mayor James. We'll pass over to you for your intro and, as I say, into the proceedings.
Thank you, Tēnā koutou. My name is James Denyer. I'm the Mayor of the Western Bay of Plenty District Council. I'll hand over to John.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm John Scrimger, and I'm a councillor for the Makatuti Puki Ward and currently Deputy Mayor.
And in the room we have Rachel Davey and Emily Watson, Robin Garrett and Holloway.
Perfect. So I'm happy for you to commence your slides.
Thank you. I think we're just sorting those out now.
Oh, okay, perfect.
There we go. Okay. So I want to just start with an overview of the Western Bay of Plenty, take us through the initial proposal, the final proposal, and then focus on the community representation, which you mentioned earlier. So moving on. This introduction to the Western Bay of Plenty. So the Western Bay of Plenty district stretches from Waihi Beach to Otamarako and south most of the way to Rotorua, but excludes Tauranga City. It's one of New Zealand's fastest growing areas and now numbers around 60,000 people. The long-term plan projects more than 10% population growth in each of the main centres throughout the 24-34 period. So this means a lot of newcomers to the district. It's currently split into 3 wards, as shown by the different colours on the map you can see. Katikati Waihi Beach to the west, the Kaimai ward in the centre, and Makatuti Puki ward in the east. The grey area is Tauranga City. The main centres include Te Puke, Katikati, Omokura, Waihi Beach, and Makatuti. These and the other smaller settlements comprise the 12 communities initially identified in our district, in our Tōwahi, your place, engagement on our long-term plan and district plan review. And that's reflected in the proposal for local representation that I'll come to later. So this map shows the wards and existing community board areas. The community board areas are outlined in blue. There have been 5 community boards, Waihi Beach, Katikati, Omokura, Makatu, and Te Puke, in the Western Bay of Plenty district since 1989. And from that map, you can see the variability and disparity of coverage of the community boards, which I'll come to in more detail later. Overall, around 40% of residents are not part of a community board area. So I'll now discuss the initial proposal. The initial proposal followed a month-long pre-engagement with community, tangata whenua, community boards, and resident and ratepayer associations. There was majority support from council to establish a Māori ward and subsequently to affirm the decision in the aftermath of a changing legislative environment. It was felt important that a Māori ward councillor should represent a similar number of voters compared to a general ward councillor within the plus or minus 10%, although this was acknowledged as not being a legal requirement, but it was seen as a key underpinning principle of achieving a fair and effective representation. There was general agreement from councillors and pre-engagement that the number of councillors should be the same or possibly less than it is currently. This was supported by best practice guidance on the most effective size for governance bodies, with the Institute of Directors recommending 6 to 8 directors for small and medium-sized companies. Though we acknowledge this is a balance between effective representation and good governance. Additional representation from community boards was also factored into our consideration for council size. Those principles and the electoral population data meant that only one Māori ward councillor was feasible alongside a slightly reduced number of councillors overall. Beyond that, there was a desire to retain the 3-ward structure with 2 minor boundary adjustments on each side of the Kaimai ward to maintain compliance with the plus minus 10% rule in the Local Electoral Act. I want to highlight that the status quo around community representation and community boards does not work well. There is inconsistent coverage between wards, within wards, and between communities in the existing community boards. Waihi Beach and Katikati cover almost the whole ward between them. Omokura is limited to the discrete peninsula with no wider ward coverage. Te Puke covers the town and some areas of hinterland, whilst Makatu is limited to covering the village and an undersized ratepayer base, leading to them paying around 6 times more per property than the other community boards. Lack of representation and equity, as 40% of properties in the district are not in a community board area. And in addition, it creates problems of how to promote localism by delegating functions and funding consistently. Various options were considered, including disestablishing community boards altogether, or a revised version of the ward committees proposed in the 2018-19 representation review. But it weighed on councillors' minds that these would be unpopular options. The initial proposal was to retain the 5 community boards, but right-size them around the urban areas to be more consistent. Makatu was the exception in that the issues arising from its small ratepayer base could not be ignored. Its size was therefore increased, although this did also align with what was considered to be its community of interest. Council also took the additional step of including other options in the back end of the initial proposal to show what other options were considered in its development. So now I'll move on to the final proposal and the consultation that led to it. And I'm recognising Chair Duffy's comments about consultation. I do want to just stress a few brief comments about this. Council made considerable efforts through the consultation period to engage on the initial proposal and provide assurance that a robust approach was used noting some of the feedback from some of the objectors criticising our consultation approach. Consultation included have your say, brochure, mail-outs, focus groups, formal hearings, targeted engagement with community boards, tangata whenua, and others. There were 3 tabletop sessions held across the district, which were a safe space to explore contentious components of the representation review, with facilitated discussions focused on the hot topics of Māori representation, council representation, and community representation. They helped build understanding, address misinformation, and further explain the rationale behind council's proposal. In all, we received 550 submissions, so I think it's a pretty decent number. The consultation enabled informed feedback, encouraged a broad community response, and allowed for in-depth views to be shared. So what was our response to submissions? Well, as everyone on here knows, a representation review is a complex beast with many interrelated aspects to be considered for a final proposal. We wanted to hear the views of the community and seek the best solutions within the legislative framework and constraints. We knew that some aspects, such as Māori wards and community representation, would elicit widely varying and strong opinions that we would have to consider and weigh up. The 550 submissions we received helped us in this and gave us guidance as to where representation solutions or improvements to the initial proposal might lie. It was a concern to some of our councillors and indeed some of the objectors that you'll hear today that the final proposal for the community representation differed from that in the initial proposal. However, it is our contention that it is vital in genuine consultation that one is willing to listen when one gets it wrong and consider better solutions that subsequently emerge. It is also right for us to weigh up considerations at a more strategic and district-wide level than perhaps individual submitters might. And this approach is further supported by legal advice that our final proposal option is within scope of Section 19N of the Local Electoral Act. So I'll now hand over to Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour, who will cover off council representation.
Thank you, James. Do want to highlight that while the final proposal did have some variance from initial and around community boards, it didn't in regard to council, and the proposals that we put forward into the final proposal generally carried good support from across the district, and we will cover those off in the following slides. Particularly in regard to the basis of election, it was decided that this should continue on a ward basis, and this aligns very strongly with community feedback where 86% of those who responded supported the 3 general ward structure and only 5% against it. Election by ward is a familiar concept, and there seems to be little desire to change that.
Thank you, John. The 3 existing wards, the 3 existing wards are felt to work well and meet the required plus or minus 10% rule set out in the Local Electoral Act. There was a more divided view regarding the Māori ward, with 53% in support and 47% against. The establishment of a Māori ward is supported by both tangata whenua partnership forums, Te Ihu o Te Waka o Te Arawa and Te Kahui Mana Whenua o Te Rangamoana, and provides for improved representation for Māori. It's also worth noting that the Māori ward will be tested through a binding poll alongside the 2025 local elections for the 2028 and 2031 triennia.
There was reasonable support for the small reduction in the number of councillors, with 53% being in support of that, as opposed to 33% being against. As already highlighted, and James has mentioned this earlier in his presentation, the rationale was a consideration about enhancing efficient and focused decision-making while still providing adequate representation, complicated by having to adhere to the plus or minus 10% rule. It is worth noting that there was some desire to have 2 Maori wards as opposed to 1, because the 2 ends of our district have 2 different iwi groupings. But as explained earlier, if we were to go to that model, it would require a much larger number of councillors to fit within the plus or minus 10% rule. And so it wasn't practical, essentially.
So there was good support for the minor boundary adjustments, with 49% in favour, 16% against, with many not expressing opinion. It doesn't affect that many people. This was seen by councillors as a minor change necessary to meet the fair representation requirements of the plus minus 10% rule. It was unanimously supported by council and not raised in the objections.
Thank you. I was elected to count. Sorry, I'm ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Sorry, before the Mayor moves on to discuss local communication, I wanted to give context on this matter of recent representation reviews. Yeah, so I was elected to council in 2013, immediately following the 2012-2013 representation review, which amalgamated the Te Puke and Makatu wards and the Katikati and Waihi Beach wards. At that time, there was considerable apprehension amongst some parts of the community about the ability for candidates from smaller centres to be elected in larger wards. However, that election and the subsequent 3 election cycles have shown this is not an issue, and it is now largely forgotten. Although, from time to time, there have been people raise this as an issue and request the having an individual ward again to guarantee their representation. In that review determination, the Commission recommended that Council look carefully at its community board arrangements. So this was considered in the 2018-2019 representation review, with a proposal to establish ward committees with appointed community representation. However, communities mostly wanted retention of their community board, and it would be fair to say that Council's proposal failed to gain sufficient support in the community or from the Commission. There was uncertainty around how some of the detail on how those committees would operate. As a consequence, the status quo of 5 community boards remained in place. So in summary, arrangements for Council have worked pretty well, but community board arrangements not so well.
Slide, Emily, you could go back a couple. That's the one. So although the proposal for ward committees did not succeed in 2019, the Local Government Commission suggested further consideration of the matter of its local community representation. It is against this context that Council developed its initial proposal. As outlined earlier, the status quo around community representation and community boards does not work well. Following the failure to establish ward committees in 2019, the former mayor introduced ward forums for the 2019-2022 triennium to address the inequities in community representation. In my term since 2022, I initiated community forums, and each had their advantages, but it is probably fair to say that they were or can be regarded as problematic workarounds that involve an element of duplication of the role of community boards. And that is until a solution for comprehensive localism in our community representation can be achieved. Our initial proposal for resizing the existing community boards did not find favour through the consultation process. It was viewed as diminishing their reach and responsibilities rather than focusing their roles to relatively consistent urban areas as intended. Listening to feedback, we therefore chose a new option for our final proposal, the key elements of which were proposed by various submitters. We would disestablish the 5 current community boards and establish 3 new community boards, with each would cover the entirety of a ward and be known as the Makatu Te Puke Ward Community Board, the Kaimai Ward Community Board, and the Katikati Waihi Beach Ward Community Board. They would have 6 elected members and 2 councillors appointed from the respective ward. Importantly, subdivisions would enable localism to be guaranteed with fair and effective representation that prevents the larger towns and communities from dominating, with each community of interest being represented with their own representatives. Council's final proposal addresses the shortcomings of the past, provides clarity for community boards, and maintains democratically elected positions in a familiar legislative framework. The final proposal responds to feedback relating to the inequitable coverage of community boards in the district. Every property in the district will be included in one of the community boards. That is, with the exception of Matakana and Rangiora Islands, as their desire is direct engagement for their small electoral population of around 250 people through political and operational relationships via a marae and hapu framework. The proposal aligns with the strong community feedback to retain community boards, with 74% in favour and 10% against. Though I will note that this feedback was in response to retaining the 5 existing community boards rather than this option specifically. But I think it's worth noting that this is about retaining community boards and that local desire for local representation. It also addresses feedback from some communities that currently do not have a community board, but may have expressed a desire to have one, as well as other suggestions to combine community boards or look to broader ward level coverage. It aligns with those who responded negatively to the reduction in the initial proposal of the Katikati and Te Puke community board areas, and those who expressed the importance of the connection of the rural areas to adjacent towns. It addresses concerns about committees being appointed rather than elected, which was the issue in the previous representation review, and a perception that council would only appoint people who were favourable. As can be seen from the table on the previous slide, I will note the subdivision non-compliance with the plus or minus 10% rule for 2 of the community boards. Essentially, as communities of interest are considered at a very local scale, compliance with the rule becomes challenging to adhere to. I'd say next to impossible, but we're on with challenging. It would result in anomalies that do not reflect community of interest appropriately. The following slides will outline the community boards and their subdivisions in more detail. John.
The 3 subdivisions within the Te Puke Makatu ward and the eastern subdivision, comprising the broader eastern areas of communities Pukahina, Pongakawa and Paengaroa. Splitting the urban Te Puke area between separate electoral subdivisions would not effectively reflect that community. We've heard through submissions that the satellite areas, satellite to the town of Te Puke, of Waitangi and Manaweka, who identify strongly with Te Puke. This would generally reflect of the extent of those areas identified through the Te Puke spatial plan process that is currently underway. Given the long-established community of Makatu and its community board representations, it was considered important that this area be reflected by an electoral subdivision where they were not overlooked or overvoted by others. Following the boundaries created by State Highway 2 and the coastline creates an easily understood area, but the small population makes it challenging to align with the plus or minus 10% rule. For the eastern subdivision, there are sufficient commonalities between the rural areas and the smaller communities or hubs of Pukahina, Pongakawa and Paengaroa. This subdivision is compliant with the plus or minus 10% rule.
So for the Katikati Waihi Beach Ward Community Board, the subdivision boundaries align with the existing Katikati Community Board and Waihi Beach Community Board boundaries, but do not comply with the plus minus 10% rule. These boundaries are well known by the community and supported by submissions opposing a reduction in the Katikati Community Board area. Waihi Beach is a popular holiday town, and its electoral population belies the size it reaches in summer and over the shoulder period. This creates a range of unique issues and increased demand on community board members. Council felt that the most equitable solution was for a 3-3 split for each subdivision, but a 4-2 split could be considered by the Commission if you felt more comfortable with that. For the Kaimai Ward Community Board, there are 3 subdivisions: Omokura, Kaimai West, and Kaimai East. These subdivisions align remarkably well with the plus minus 10% rule, whilst reflecting appropriate communities of interest. Omokura is the urbanising growth town, and the rural communities in the Kaimai and surrounding Tauranga are conveniently split along an approximate boundary of State Highway 29, which separates the more horticultural and lifestyle properties in Whakamarama, Te Puna and Minden from other more rural properties in Ohaiti, Orapi and Omanawa and elsewhere.
The rating for community boards has been determined through this year's annual plan. The targeted rates have been removed and instead a charge of $17.25 has been included within the uniform annual general charge. This is a major saving on the existing targeted rates for each community boards that range from $23.41 to $184.64. Partly this is due to a widening the ratepayer base across the district, and partly due to having efficiencies from fewer community boards with reduced interdepartmental charges. This creates a significant reduction in rates for Makatu in particular, but maintains the benefit for the town of having community board representation. The patchy coverage of community boards has previously hindered a consistent view of community board functions and delegations. The intention is for the new council after the election later this year to review those to enhance localism.
So just on the last slide now, just to recap, there was robust consultation of the initial proposal. The community largely agreed with the initial proposal, but community representation remained a controversial topic, and we felt that could be improved. There was a determined effort to improve local community representation and solve the problems of the past. Inadequate solutions and workarounds from previous representation reviews and subsequent workarounds, we aim to find a better solution there. In our view, and weighing all the considerations, the final proposal provides an equitable outcome that improves fair and effective representation. So that's it from me, and I'm happy to take any questions as the Commission wishes. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you, Mayor James. And just again, for clarity, the Commission will ask questions. There may be questions that can't be answered immediately, they can just be recorded and they can come back in the right of reply later on this afternoon. So we'll keep a record of those questions anyway. And in addition to that, when we do hear from appellants, similarly, we may have questions that we need clarity from you, and that can come back through via that right of reply. So look, we will take some time now just to drill in, and I'll start with Commissioner Bigham.
Oh, kia ora kōrua. Thank you for that very comprehensive explanation of where your council got to, and it was really helpful. Thank you for having the slides as well, so that I could look at them on the laptop as you were talking. I'm just interested to know, you noted previous problems around, what's the word, fairness and equity around getting resources, getting funding, etc., having adequate community representation in the areas where community boards are not currently situated. Just interested to know, is the proposal that your final proposal that you come up with based on what the council feels you need to do to increase representation in those areas and reach into those areas? Or have those areas without current community boards been the ones themselves to come to say to you as a council, we need this, we're not getting that in areas with community boards are? I'm just trying to find where the seat of motivation came from to expand across the whole district.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Bigham. Communities that didn't have community boards have from time to time said, why don't we have a community board? We'd like a community board. How do you set one up? Questions along those lines. It's also fair to say that as councillors, we are obviously more aware of the option of having community boards and aware that some communities are missing out. Some people in the Kaimais particularly that aren't even aware that a community board's an option. So right. We do get those requests, but it's also from councillors' own knowledge of the system, if you like, and what is possible.
Thanks. That's helpful.
Yeah, and just to add, actually, we get those requests from time to time, but they've also come through the submission process. So there have been formal requests for those through the submission process.
In this last round of submissions as well to your initial proposal? That's
correct, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
So just extending on from that, can you help me understand, can you give me an example of what is it that's not worked with the current model? Give us some, because I'm really struggling to get a good feel for it. What's not working and what will work as a consequence of this? I've got, so hold them. So there's two questions. And the third one is, what is it that how do you fund these guys? What do they do? What resources do they have? Can you paint that picture for us, please?
Thank you, Commissioner Duffy. So what's not worked? So at the moment we have 5 community boards and around 40% of the district that doesn't have a community board.
But what's not working? What is it?
So in order to cover the rest of the ward and hear people's views about various issues of the day or whatever, I've instituted community forums and the last triennium ward forums. So these community forums are informal committees, if you like, which go to each ward and hear these views and share them. So, but then we need one for each ward, but then they double up with community boards. So there's been a bit of, I'd say, resentment or a misunderstanding about the role of each of those and how they interlink with community boards, so that we end up having 8 committees effectively, or 5 boards and 3 committees to cover community representation, which I know from staff's point of view is quite a lot to cover and to support. So that's one aspect that hasn't worked well.
But isn't that comprehensive localism?
And so in terms of funding and so on, for example, we
can't spend outside the boundaries.
The Deputy Mayor just telling me the community boards can't spend outside their boundaries, but the community boards have a budget to give grants and to do some minor roading works. But what we find is that, you know, if you have a situation where the community boards are giving grants out to their local communities, then we have to find an alternative mechanism to give grants out to people outside that. So we have a community matching fund which does that. But then you could argue it overlaps between the community matching fund organised and run by council and the grant system run by community boards. That's just one example of the sort of thing where there's overlap and duplication.
And the proposal of the 3 community boards captures that in your minds.
Yeah, yes, it would. I mean, the details of what the exact functions and delegations is a question for the future, but that is certainly something that would make the delegations a lot easier to delineate.
Okay, and please allow me. So to that very last comment that you made, is that suggesting that should the decision be to support the proposal of the 3 community boards, there is still some work to do to determine what they're going to do?
Yes, because the roles and delegations, or at least the delegations of a community board, are a decision of council, and that is something that the next mayor and council will have to decide. I think there's a fair desire to do that. I would certainly be supportive if I get re-elected. So that's a council decision, not a representation review decision.
I'm going to have to think hard on that. Right. So, Commissioner Bull, I just can't see it on the screen. Are you
Thank
there?
you. You say that 5 community boards didn't work well, but you're going to replace them with 3 ward boards. So how is that going to work? Who's going to resource those boards as well? And do they have a vote on council?
So community boards will be supported in the similar way to the way the community boards are currently. We just have 3 of them rather than 5. So that is fundamentally a more efficient setup.
You're calling these ward boards, but you're saying they are like community boards. So what
they are ward-wide community boards.
Better clarity. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So they are community boards. Yep.
They are, yeah, exactly. They are community boards. They just cover the whole of each ward.
Mm-hmm. So why from 5 to 3? How is that going to give you better representation?
So the key aspect here are the subdivisions. So without the subdivisions, this doesn't fly at all. There's no point doing it. Localism for me is very important, and you need that local knowledge on the ground that community board members provide, and you need those represented adequately at a community board level. So the subdivisions guarantee the localism, and then they can bring it into a ward-wide community board.
So I'm not sure here what you're going to get out of 3 that you were not getting out of the 5 community boards.
So the key thing is that everyone is now covered. So under the 5 community boards, only 60% of the district was covered, had a voice. Under the new setup and proposed setup, everyone does.
I'm struggling a little with that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry for the gaps. There's just quite a lot to try and make sure that we completely comprehend that that background thinking. I'm going to be really interested as the appellants come through, so it's a notice to them around their observations that in terms of what you're saying, Mayor James. So there is so for me, it would be most useful to understand what the delegations are anticipated to be for the community boards. And so I'm trying to be sure that I understand that there'll be no less than what currently, because the clarity is not there, there'll be no less.
If it's
than what
helpful,
yeah.
if it's helpful, Commissioner
Yeah.
Duffy, we can provide some further examples in our right of reply about what
Yeah.
kind of delegations we're talking
Good.
about.
I think that would be most helpful. So we'll just take our time on that. I'll go back to Commissioner Bigham.
Kia ora, thank you. Delegations was next on my list of questions, so I appreciate you coming back with that. My other question, I was writing as you were noting, 10% population growth, but I neglected to write where and over which period of time. Is that per annum, and is that district wide? Or sorry, I just missed the next bit of your explanation as you were talking about a 10% population growth.
I think the data was in each of our main towns, it was 10% over the LTP period.
Oh, over LTP, great. And each of the main towns, so Omokoroa, Maketu, Te Puke, those.
I'm just getting a slight assistance on it. So I think it might not be quite all of them, but it's district wide, certainly, I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah, Te Puke, Omokoroa, Katikati. That's right.
Great.
Okay, sorry, me, James, but so clearly we're drilling pretty hard, but we just need to get it. So,
that's okay.
So clearly this proposition resolves a concern in council's mind about representation. Everybody is now covered. I get that. What are the added values? What are the added bonuses to communities? Because you mentioned earlier on, there's a fund for minor works that the community boards have, and there's also the same fund available for those that are not in community board areas. So that's evened out. There's 3 rather than 5. Obviously, I get that. But what are the added? So remember, this is about communities being represented, communities of interest. So can you articulate the added values that communities will benefit from? Should the final decision be 3 rather than 5?
Yeah, well, I think you covered a lot of the advantages there. It is about the universality of the coverage. It is about the subdivisions guaranteeing localism. It is about the uniformity of funding. So, I mean, for example, Maketu is no longer going to pay $184 a year in targeted rates. They'll pay the $17.25. It's about council considering what it can, we'll come back to this later, of course, what it can delegate so that those local communities can get those works done or be represented, and that everyone can come together in a community board meeting and share their views and desires and so on.
Okay. Look, I think we've had a pretty good drilling there, and I am conscious that I want to try and stick to time as best we can, even though we started the best part of 15 minutes late, so I've factored that in. Look, I think we'll park it there and say thanks for, and as observed by fellow commissioners, the detail in that presentation was superb, and obviously that that slideshow we'll get, that slide pack we'll get and be able to reflect on that a bit more. So let's now, without his help, move now to the appellants, and just to assist commissioners, I'm going to rattle out some pages as we go so we don't miss it. But to the Maketu Community Board, represented by the chair, Te Pane Hopping, we're going to go to page 74 of the slide pack within the papers. Is that the best way to describe it? So Ellie, you'll bring in, gosh, hold on, what am I doing? Here we go. Have I got Te Pane there?
No.
Brilliant.
You can
Welcome.
hear me? Hello, welcome. Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa. Good afternoon, obviously, to the commissioners, the LGC team and the council team. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to the Makatū Community Board appeal. It's a really quite an exciting process to work through. It's definitely a first for myself. So, ko Tipene Hopping, Taku Inua, I'm the chair of the Makatū Community Board. Firstly, please let me introduce you to fellow board member. Hopefully, if technology has prevailed, Brett Waterhouse may be joining us online as he is a fellow community board member. For transparency, Brett is actually presenting his personal appeal a bit later on the agenda today. I'd like to also pass on apologies, please, for board members Deputy Rewe Boy Corbett and member Donna Walters, as they couldn't attend with work commitments. The Makatū Community Board has appealed 2 of the Western Bay of Plenty District Council community and council representation decisions. These are, firstly, the disestablishment of the 5 current community boards and proposed replacement with 3 community ward boards. And the second one is the allocation of only 1 Māori representative to cover the whole district. Our observations to the first decision for the community representation are: Makatū has historically been locally represented by community members. I'm an example of this, being my 3rd generation from my whānau to actually represent Makatū's community. Community representation from within our own local village provides real and authentic advocacy, as this is known and trusted by our community. All 4 of our current 4 board members grew up here and we live here. We're easily accessible and we're known within our community. We know our community challenges better than anyone, which is providing real localism. The diversity of our elected board members means we can connect with more people and engage with groups across our community. This is beneficial in obtaining a broad perspective of ideas, proposals, and decisions that need to be made. It is also advantageous when complex council topics or processes are undertaken, as we can help explain these items and discuss that impact with our community. We actively encourage the community to partake in submission opportunities to help ensure the Makatū voice is heard. Makatū is its own community of interest, and the best advocates for Makatū are the 4 elected local community board members. Makatū is quite unique and special in our district. It's a special place in our district. It has a diverse terrain which includes low-lying coastal villages either side of our maunga, Pokimaere. There is a special feeling when you come to Makatū. It's a real simple way of life. It's unpolished in its presentation and it has the bare minimum of infrastructure. This sadly does make our community vulnerable though during weather events or natural disasters, like what occurred with the 2023 cyclones. The Makatū Community Board helped initiate and facilitate getting an updated emergency preparedness plan underway with key local representatives. This is to ensure we're resilient in those events going forward. Across the representation submissions from the district, 74% of the submitters indicated yes to retaining community boards. This strong statistic is real, and it clearly reflects the support and benefits ratepayers within community boards receive. Council have resolved an option of disestablishing the community boards without any transparent or open community consultation. The council has assumed that the 3 ward community boards are effectively a hybrid of the current 5 community boards operating across the district today, without actually testing this. Under this proposal, Makatū community representation will be reduced to 1 from the 4 that we have today. This is a significant reduction in the representation that Makatū has. Makatū is not a location that you drive through. It is a conscious choice to turn off and come to Makatū or come home to Makatū. This makes Makatū a remote location, and protecting the magic of Makatū for our future generations is really important by ensuring advocacy for Makatū is retained at the current level. And then I'd like to move into the second point, which was around the Māori representation. So the Western Bay of Plenty has a diverse range of towns and villages, which wrap around the larger urban areas like Papamoa and Tauranga that fall within Tauranga City Council. Whilst physically you can drive from one side of the district to the other within a day, the practicality of doing this and engaging effectively with iwis and the community in a working day would be greatly diminished and inefficient. The iwi representation across the Western Bay has key distinct differences from the east to the west, and placing the advocacy on one Māori representative alone will not allow for fair representation or a balance of iwi views across the district. The Tikana protocols, the historical significance, the assets, and the vision of each iwi is very different. Whilst tangata whenua and our communities were consulted on Māori representation, the process led to a leading question being assessed to attain answers of yes or no to Māori representation. The yes was...
Tiffany, did you see the start of this where I made some observations? Did you get...
yes, I did, yeah.
Yeah. So the Māori ward decision's been made, eh?
Yes, so I sought clarity from Courtney and she said I can talk to the number of representatives.
Okay.
Is that?
Yeah, okay.
Correct, yeah, okay. So yeah, the yes was that assumed by the council that only one representative is required. No alternatives were explored or tested to see if in fact two Māori representatives would advocate for the eastern and western iwis across the district more effectively. Fair and consistent representation would be to nominate two representatives to cover the eastern and the western Māori wards within the district. I guess at this point, I would like to ask Brett if he has any further observations that he'd like to add from the Makatū Community Board.
Sure.
I just want to reiterate the fact that, Makatū is a cultural, historic village, and we are very, very whānau-based sort of community. We know everyone. If you don't wave going through the town, then you're not looking where you're going.
Got it. Well done. Thank you.
Yes. Is there any questions?
Yeah. Well, I'll just check with fellow commissioners. I'm just doing it. You have to suffer me. I'm trying to use two screens. Commissioner Bigham.
Hi, tēnā kōrua, ngā mihi nui. Thank you, Tiffany, for your submission. Just interested in your perspectives around the oath that people take when they're elected to do the best that they can for everybody that they're representing. So while someone may not specifically be from Makatū, if they are part of a wider community board grouping, they are supposed to be there for everybody that's included in their area. So just interested in whether or not you feel you could hold someone to account who doesn't necessarily come from Makatū to ensure your voices are heard. And also hearing that 40% of the population in your rohe is not currently represented by a community board, how do you think those communities can be best served under the current model? If the current model is retained, what do those 40%, the other 40%, how do they get what you've got, basically, is my question. Kia ora.
Thank you. Lots of beautiful questions there, Commissioner Bigham. Okay, the first one, I guess in terms of the oath, I would say you take the oath as a legal obligation. That's, obviously very clear. And you have your roles and responsibilities to act on behalf of the community based on the scope you've been awarded to. I do believe, though, you have a natural affinity to what you know because it's what you know best. And for us, representing Makatū, if you're local, you know that best. If you live in Te Puke and try to represent Makatū, it's not first-hand knowledge. It's not relevant to the local issues that we have day to day. So I would go to say the oath is real, but I think when you have your own natural, authentic localism, that changes how you operate because you know what's best for your community. The second point you raised about best serving. So in the Eastern Districts out here, we have very strong Pukahina and Paengaroa ratepayer associations. They're legacy. They've been around for a very long time. They work very well. And I believe in those communities, which this isn't fact, it's from what I've heard, that the residents actually, that process works well for them.
So you feel that they're sufficiently activated with the current setup that they've got?
Yeah, I mean, anyone or, you know, a decision can be taken to form a community board that can change. But yeah, the ratepayers associations, they operate well. Makatū, we've always had a community board. Obviously, there's been different forms pre-1989, but we've always had community board representation. So to suddenly take that away without the proper consultation would be, yeah, not accepted well.
Okay.
We're just chipping in there, Tiffany. So those ratepayer associations, do they engage directly with you or through to council?
No, that standalone committee. They go and present at the council meetings, in the public forum, or if there's presentations that they wish to give to the council forum.
So can we just go back to you, me, James, and the right of reply, just to help us to understand what are those ratepayer association relationships direct with council, and how, if at all, they'll be impacted by the proposal. But we'll pick it up in the right of reply later on, if that's okay. Just trying to understand.
I'm happy to answer it now if you like, if you'd prefer.
No, I think we'll hold off. We'll hold off, and we'll get that later on, because I think there'll be some other questions, obviously, to go into that favour. So how do those ratepayer associations work at the moment? How will they be impacted upon should the three community board model be implemented? That will be just useful to understand.
Brendan?
Commissioner, yes, Penny?
I think that Brett might have something that he'd like to say. I think he's been raising his hand, but you may not be able to see him on your screen. I'm sorry, mate. I apologise, Brett. Please go.
No, all good, matey. I was trying to find the raise your hand button on my screen here, but I couldn't. I was just literally raising my hand. So
yeah, don't worry. You and I are on the same technological page, so don't stress.
Just touching base on that, the declaration that does get sworn into. I, ironically enough, got sworn in on the 20th of November, the day of this decision, and to witness what happened. Obviously, John is a councillor for our area, and he's well aware of how Makatū feels about this representation proposal. I feel he didn't quite really do diligence to his area, his district. Yeah, he was turning a blind eye to what the actual locals were trying to advocate for.
Okay, let's just park that up there for the minute, mate. We just want to be clear with our process. Roger. So, yeah. Okay.
My just going back to just being the roots of the town, as Tiffany said earlier on, my papa used to be the caretaker for the town, and that was a proud thing to be of. You know, there wasn't a footpath that wasn't swept, and to see that happening these days, you just don't see it. You know, the proudness of the town is left with the bigger corporations. You know.
Okay, got it, Brett. Thank you. I think we can be comfortable that we've got you've had a fair go, and we've got a fair perspective, and we've also got some additional questions. So I think that's been well worth that exercise. Tiffany, I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Kia ora.
Have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much. And thanks, Brett.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
No worries. So we're now going to move to the Te Puke Community Board observations, and Cassie Ellis is going to come on, and that's on page 59 of that slide pack. But Brett will be impressed. We're working off 3 pieces of technology here, the big screen, the little screen, and the iPhone. It's not too bad, is it? Kia ora. Welcome. And you've been watching proceedings so far?
We have indeed.
Fantastic. Okay, we're in your hands. And are you Cassie?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic. Welcome.
So, kia ora koutou. We are the Te Puke Community Board. I am Cassie Ellis. Beside me, we have Dale Snell, our Deputy Chair, and member Karen Summerhayes.
Yeah.
Nina Chauhan is joining us online, but she is not speaking directly. So thank you for allowing us the time to speak today. So, yes, I am Cassie Ellis, the current youngest Māori female chair of the Te Puke Community Board. I have deep roots in this community through my whānau connections, friends and networks. I've built a strong understanding of the community's needs and aspirations. I am passionate about seeing Te Puke thrive and want to contribute to its growth and development. My approach is characterised by openness, honesty and vibrancy, qualities that I believe are essential for the effective leadership. Additionally, my ability to work collaboratively with diverse ethnic groups is crucial for ensuring inclusive development and practices that benefit everyone as a whole in our community. I will now just hand over to Dale Snell.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Dale Snell, the Deputy Chair of the Te Puke Community Board. Te Puke is really unique. Oh, sorry, I just lost my notes. Every community group that I've been involved in has had the same end goal, and that is a thriving Te Puke. I've been deeply entrenched in our community for over 20 years. In the past, I've been a trustee at the primary school, on the local PTA, heavily involved in local sports, early childhood education and the high school. I've also been the local community advisor for whānau Awhina Plunkett and involved with CoLab and been instrumental in numerous community events. I still sit on several community groups, including a charitable community fund, an events coordinator and on the community response team. I've held a seat on the community board for close to 6 years. I mention all this because it is typical of community board members, both present and past. What is often overlooked is the very personal relationships our community board has with a range of sectors within our town. These relationships allow us to be approachable and trusted. When we advocate to get stuff done, and this is localism at its finest. Te Puke is different. It's not a small town, it's not a service centre, it's a village, whose overall success is because it has a village approach to problem solving and designing unique programs and projects that benefit us all. We are able to achieve these outcomes because we have appropriate delegations and a discrete area on which to focus on. We are a passionate village and a passionate community board, and this is how we achieve the big and the small things. We feel the new proposal structure will see us competing for resources and will water down the passion and the drive, the personal approach that enables our community board and our community to thrive. I'll just pass you over to Karen.
Kia ora koutou, ko Karen Summerhayes tōku ingoa. I'm a former regional councillor, a community development specialist and have been so for about 25 years. I'm a Te Puke resident for about 9 years and I'm a first term community board member. I'm a trustee of 2 local community charitable trusts.
Right, sorry. So we appreciate the process to find the right representation for our communities, in which we are undertaking through the Local Authorities Act. We're going to have a bit of a chat right now. We will leave some time for questions, but if there isn't any right now, we would appreciate it if we could carry on.
Keep going, please. Yep.
We understand that the Commission will not consider points made regarding process taken by Western Bay of Plenty District Council. But we would like it noted that it has been less than satisfactory and very difficult to engage with. We were unable, to canvass our community appropriately. nothing about us without us.
I would like to take you through maybe some of those comments that you were requiring, Commissioner Duffy, around what you would like to hear from. I have other notes, but I will just quickly address those ones so that we don't miss out. With regard to the delegations and the size of the job, if we are going to go into an election and we don't know the size of the job or the regulations or the delegations, I don't believe that we're going to be able to find the right candidates for the role. So it's been very difficult to provide this appeal without that some of that information. Just with regard to the rating notes, I'm pretty sure that if you ask the people of Te Puke whether $15 more a year is worth dedicated representation rather than ward-wide representation, they would be very likely to pay the extra $15 that it would cost them for their own community board. And council stated today that the community boards don't work well for them. Well, actually, it's not about them. It's about us. And it's about the communities and how they work for, and how the community boards work for the communities. And quite often we come up against this idea that we are an expensive thing to have, but our people are rated for us. So with regards to the things like the funding that's available, our people are rated for it. So therefore they would expect that that money was spent within their community of interest. So now I'll just pop over to the case to keep the status quo. Te Puke Community Board Rohi is working for us and the residents. We are a discrete community of interest. We are effective and we work at the community level. Te Puke has its own set of opportunities and challenges that need support at a micro level. We do the small stuff at the coalface, and we hold the council to account locally and provide continuity through huge staff churn. I think we've, in the last 5 years, 25 staff members have changed that support us in particular roles. So we are the constant. We have a defined focus and we use our meeting and workshops to service this focus. Our last meeting was 3.5 hours just to service the community board, to the community concerns. We had a public forum where we had 2 quite substantial groups come and talk to us about local issues. We foster a sense of belonging, and while we may not get huge crowds at our meeting, more and more people know that this is where they come for help. We put the community in community boards, whereas the word board will just become an arm of the council and a tick box exercise for the people of Te Puke. Our case against the proposal, I've talked briefly about the rating impact, and I won't go back over that. We're a growth area. We have extreme pressure on our boundaries as a Te Puke board for growth. We have a huge industrial area, the Rangiuru Business Park. We have villages popping up, private plan chain villages popping up around out into the areas. And we will likely see a town at the end of the Eastern Highway developed over the next while. So our argument is that the levels of service slip in existing areas when new areas are being developed. We need strong advocacy to make sure that our levels of service are maintained and enhanced. While we might not agree politically as a group all the time, although most of the time we do, and this particular tranche of us anyway, we're all there for Te Puke. We all know that that's the bottom line that we come together for. The workload of a larger responsibility will not be manageable. We are 4 women who are in full-time employment. We don't, the idea of going in and sitting on a board that's ward-wide with all of the other considerations and all of the other responsibilities, it lifts it up a level. It lifts it up to a place where all of a sudden you're going to have to put a lot more time in. And even now, our time is already stretched with the likes of spatial plans, committee meetings, and having to respond to things like this. We don't have staff help that writes us our submissions. We don't have legal advice. We have to maintain that ourselves. Whakatane, I also work in Whakatane District Council, and my observations of their community boards that are ward-wide is that they struggle to be a cohesive unit. There is a lot of they work in the subdivision space as well, and there is a lot of trading, horse trading and conversations and envy and jealousy that comes out at the table. That's not conducive to good decision making. Submissions and input at a higher level that would be required by this new board would be somewhat meaningless. And like I said, it will become a tick box exercise. A lot of the time, community boards are used as a repository for council information and are not necessarily engaged well back into the council processes. We do have our council representatives who do attempt to take what we are saying back to the boards, to the council. With regard to the 10% plus and minus and the magic number 6, that evidently is advice for commercial boards. I never did understand where this number 6 came from. And, you know, with regard to Poromakatu and Pukahina, how does one person effectively represent those two discrete communities? We do not believe that council has the social licence to make this change, and the proposed structure will not serve the people of Te Puke.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to end to summarise, sorry. So in summary, maintain the status quo with a slight boundary adjustment to accommodate the new Welcome Bay area. Ngā mihi, the Te Puke Community Board.
Well done. Thanks for those observations. And again, I just want to flick a question over for right of reply later on. Having heard your observations, the Te Puke Community Board observations, should it be resolved to have the options as proposed, the 3 community boards? What additional resource does council believe will need to be made available to ensure that the services and the representation that has historically occurred will continue to occur? And this is a bit of a side thing, but given the comment that Karen made about micro level, the passion, the drive, all that sort of stuff, and where would meetings occur on this bigger model? Does that mean communities have to ship out of their normal comfort zone to go to different places? I'm just trying to get that picture of what this thing is going to look like. So my question in the right of reply is, will additional resource be necessary to ensure that nothing's lost? That's the guts of it.
Mm.
And so can I go to Commissioner Bigham? You got Commissioner Bigham?
Yep, please.
Yeah.
Kia ora. O tēnā koutou. Ngā mihi nui. Thank you for your comprehensive submission today. I was just wondering, did you hear my questions to the other community board members previously? Did. Okay, can I pose the same question to you around should the 3 community board model be implemented? What strength or what faith do you have in holding your member to task, really, to adequately represent your views, and the other members of that community board who are supposedly there for the whole district that they are being elected to represent? That's my first question. And my second one also is around, as you would have heard, you know, how does the rest of the district that currently doesn't have community boards, how do they get what you've got? And is it fair that they don't yet have that in place? And if I may just add, maybe for right of reply to the council too, I'd be interested to know, because this community board has raised a really good point around feeding back into council processes. How do the current community boards feed back into council? You know, at what point does their advice and their concerns and their requests for their communities, at what points do they feed into the council processes and be addressed and are they adequately addressed to the satisfaction of the community boards? So that last one's for the councils,
Yep.
for the council, but the first two again to you lovely ladies, if I may.
I'll pick this one up if you like. With regard to the oath and being able to represent the whole of the area, that's a real challenge, especially when at that local level where you've got pressure to get to achieve at a local level. And yes, you go in with the very best intentions to hear everybody at the table, make your decisions at the table, not have any preconceived ideas around what decisions are made. But you know, the numbers game plays, and you know, I feel sorry for Makatu in this new structure. That would be a very difficult place for them to be in. And, you know, so yes, I think everybody goes in with the very best intentions to do the best for everybody, and that would be part of that role. But when it actually comes, that would be under the new structure. And then secondly, I guess with regard to how the others are being serviced in the ward, we haven't seen that those areas are missing out. You know, Paengaroa's got a great community centre. You know, Pukahina's parks are green and well serviced. They seem to be doing okay. If they wanted a community board, they had every opportunity to ask for one.
Thanks for those comments. Sorry?
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Okay. And I'm just going to check. Commissioner Ball, are you okay?
Thank you. You covered my points. Thank you, all of you.
Brilliant. Okay. All right. So Cassie and team, thanks so much for those observations, and appreciate that you are, as you said, all working diligently in your communities voluntarily, and also to raise $1 for the family as well. So appreciate you being available.
Kia ora. Thank you.
Good. Ali will go to Keith Hay, which is page 138. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to make this submission.
No problem. You've seen the process so far, so you're okay?
Yes, I have.
Perfect. Thank you. We're in your hands.
My name is Keith Hay. The submission is made on behalf of my wife, Pat, and myself. I'm a retired geologist, and I've lived in and around Waihi Beach off and on since 1981. For the last few years, I have been chairman of the Katikat Waihi Beach Residents and Ratepayers Association. We appeal Council's proposal to cut the number of councillors in general wards by 3. Firstly, it appears to us that the only reason to reduce the number of councillors by 3 is to accommodate one Maori ward councillor. The last time this council held a referendum on whether a Maori ward was wanted, the people of this district voted no by 78% to 22%. So it is unlikely there will be a Maori ward in this district after 2028. Secondly, there are already 2 Maori on council, and reducing the number of general ward councillors might see them both lose their seats. One lives in Waihi Beach, which only has about 1/3 of the voters that Katikat has. We share a ward with Katikat. The other Maori councillor was the last to be voted on to council. And thirdly, with only 2 councillors for Katikat Waihi Beach ward, the chances of a person based in Waihi Beach being elected to council would be very slim. This concern is illustrated by the results of the last 2 elections. In 2019, 3 Waihi Beach-based candidates got just 27% of the votes, while 7 Katikat candidates got 73%. In 2022, 1 Waihi Beach candidate got 17% of the vote, while 7 Katikat candidates got 83%. While one of the 3 current councillors in this ward lives at Waihi Beach, he is probably there only because the Cadicat vote was split between 7 candidates. Having just 2 councillors in this ward will make it very difficult for someone from Waihi Beach to get on council in future because of the huge difference in populations. Cadicat 11,870 people, and Waihi Beach 4,100. For about 3 months of the year, and every year, we are probably the biggest population centre in the district. It is essential we have a resident councillor. Now, we object to council's proposal to get rid of our 5 community boards and replace them with 3 ward community boards. This proposal was not mentioned until it was too late to carry out any consultation, even though we were assured by one councillor they had been talking about it for years. We suspect the reason council did not want to consult on it was because they knew it would attract widespread opposition. In reviewing their representation arrangements, local authorities must provide for, quote, effective representation of communities of interest, unquote, and, quote, fair representation of electors. This proposal does not provide for effective representation of communities of interest, and neither does it provide fair representation of electors. We can't speak for the other wards, but we can assure the Commission that even though Cadicat and Waihi Beach are in the same ward, and I am chairman of a ratepayers association that represents both parts of the ward, the 2 towns have very little in common. Cadicat and Waihi Beach are both communities of interest, but they are very different communities of interest. Waihi Beach is more aligned with Waihi than with Cadicat. Waihi Beach is a holiday place, a place for retirees, and a dormitory town for Waihi. Cadicat also has many retirees, but it is a service town for the surrounding farming and horticultural industries. All the councillors from our ward voted against this proposal, and it was only the casting vote of the mayor that got it passed. Council proposes that Waihi Beach and Cadicat people each have the same number of elected representatives on this board. It appears to us that this will be a source of friction because Cadicat's population is almost 3 times that of Waihi Beach. That is not effective representation of communities of interest, nor is it fair representation of electors. There is a 48% difference from the average when it is meant to be less than plus or minus 10%. We suspect that these ward community boards will be set up to fail. Western Bay Plenty District Council and Tauranga City Council have been in secret talks about amalgamating some of their responsibilities. We think local body politics in the Western Bay of Plenty are going to get very complicated in the next few years. We would appreciate not having the extra complications of these proposed ward community boards. We accept that the Commission can't do much about the way Council carried out consultation or how they use survey results, but we are very concerned that instead of consulting properly, Council tried to influence submitters with misinformation in the media and in mail-outs, like this half-page ad that featured in all the local papers, which has no basis in fact. They also misrepresented the results of their surveys. We contend that they appear to have accepted submissions from people who do not live in the district, and they have misclassified answers from submitters. Now, I can give you details of that, but I'm not sure if you want to hear it.
No. You can leave it in writing and send it through to the officials, but that's as far as that you would go in that space.
Okay. We do have a suggestion for we can either retain the 5 community boards or we can add some to the wards that are deficient. And that would mean, I think, 2 in Kaimai and 1 in Te Puke Makatu ward. And they could be divided up along the same lines as council's proposed subdivisions.
Okay.
That would leave 8 community wards. That's all. Thank you.
Brilliant, Keith. Thanks for those observations. Just Commissioner Bigham. Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
Kia ora. Thank you. I didn't even have a chance to put my hand up. Thank you, Keith, for your time. Just interested in your perspectives around distinct communities of interest must be kept separate. There are community boards right across the country where their areas incorporate and encompass various communities, but they seem to come together to be able to work together for the benefit of all of those communities. Do you think that the communities in Western Bay are incapable of doing that and coming together and working in everyone's best interests in those areas?
I think in this case, yes, because they're really 2 quite distinctive communities. And in fact, Waihi Beach has tried to get out of Western Bay of Plenty twice since 1989.
But that's exactly my point, is that in other parts of the country, there are very distinct communities within community board boundaries, yet they seem to make it work. Why wouldn't it work where you live? Why would Katikati and Waihi Beach not find the commonalities or be able to elect people that would take the whole area as a point of interest and live by their oath of doing what's best for the people that they represent?
It's hard to imagine 2 other communities anywhere in New Zealand that would be so unlike. I'm sure the people of this ward would try their best, but they're really quite 2 distinct communities. And these aren't my words. These are the words of the Act, communities of interest.
Yes, which can be recognised. But it doesn't mean that they don't have to be grouped together, is my point, and they can't successfully be grouped together. So just, yeah, interested in your perspectives around that. Thank you, Keith.
Keith, can I just go to your submission? I just want absolute clarity. So it's on page got 2 numbers. It's got page 29 and 141, so I'm not quite sure how you're going to reference it. But let me just read it. You've got here, one of the advantages council gives for these committees is, and you've got inverted commas, and it says ward committees could provide representation for all resident groups across the district. What I'm trying to understand, is that a quote from council, or is that you making an observation?
Sorry, I missed the first part because you disappeared off the screen. Would you mind repeating it?
Okay. In your submission, you have a paragraph that says one of the advantages council gives for these committees is, and in inverted commas, you've got ward committees could provide representation for all resident groups across the district, including ratepayer and residents associations, rural groups, community organisations. Is that a quote you've taken from council, or is that you saying something in inverted commas?
No, it's a quote from council.
Okay, so let me just carry on then. Rural groups and community organisations who would have the ability to nominate their own representatives into the ward committee. Council could then appoint these nominees, removing the need for elections and by-elections, therefore improving efficiency and reducing costs. Now, in the writer reply, can you just clarify what that actually means? If that's a quote, well, I don't know where it's come from, so I just want to ask the question. So, Jane, keep it for the writer reply.
I'll just say no, it's incorrect, but I can expand on that later.
Right, so it's really, really, really important. So, Keith, I've asked you, is that a quote from council, or is that your words and you're saying it's a quote from council, correct?
I'm quite sure that it's a quote from council.
Okay, so I'm now asking in public, is it? And getting clarity, and that'll come back in the written reply.
It is a quote from council for a different proposal that we rejected.
Okay, all right, clarity later. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Right. Commissioner Bull, are you okay?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. So Keith, thanks for those observations. Thanks for the detail. Certainly a significant effort in the submission that you've made, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers, Keith.
Good afternoon.
I think we're going to do one more, and then we'll probably need a little bit of a break. So Nottingham Heads, I've got support for that. So can we go through to Michael Jones, page 69. Good day, Michael. Welcome. You've been watching the process so far. I'll just get you to go off mute. Get the microphone going. That's it. You've been watching the process so far?
Yeah, I certainly have.
Perfect. Thank you. We're in your hands.
Well, look, kia ora katoa. It's I guess you've read my submission, and you know basically who I am. So and that I am supporting the council's proposals at this time. So overall, I think it recognises that all residents are part of the community, and this process ensures that they are. My comments are basically on my personal experience. I'm born in Te Puke. I identify strongly with Te Puke, although it is fair to say that I spent some of my childhood in Waihi Beach and my youth living in Kaimai Tapuna area. But I was, of course, on the council for some time, so I'm taking those sort of thoughts into consideration in my support for the proposal. So I was elected to the Te Puke ward out of interest at a time as it existed then, although I was living rurally. So I could not vote, and all of my time on council, I was not able to vote for myself, which always struck me as being a little bit, strange, because Te Puke, obviously, as with my neighbours, I was part of that community. So, and I remain part of that. What am I seeing here? The Te Puke district, every organisation, I'm still involved in lots of organisations in this town, and all of them have members and supporters from throughout the area, from Otomarakau to the Papamoa Hills. In other words, the Te Puke Makatu wards. So it's not just a little local town community. Te Puke is a service town with everybody comes here. There's one high school. There is, one sports groups or whatever you engage in are in this town, and they attract people from throughout the district. So I wanted to be very clear what is, of course, a community, and the eastern area is totally interdependent on the rural community and surroundings, and it's a central service town of Te Puke, which has that school and the supermarkets and the sports fields and the churches and the many service businesses. Wherever you walk, the streets, you drink the coffee in a cafe, or you go to the fair or a library, you meet and mix with people from throughout the district. They all use these facilities. They have an interest in our town. They are our community. I mean, the small communities within our district all depend on one another and would have a much larger influence if they worked together, if they combined. If there is a message that I have for you and for others, it is that I'm personally for uniting people, bringing them together, not dividing us up into small little groups, but coming together, making decisions that benefit us all on a larger scale. So that's my overarching theme in my comments today. So I think the current system is restrained by the council procedures, and I guess you're all familiar with the meeting procedures and so on, that we all have to go through when you have a community board or council. And there are a few delegations that's been highlighted already for the current system. I see that as very much improving under the new system. But currently it's the roading, parks, community development, waste disposal, etc. They're all centralised from head office, Parks Corner, and the decisions concerning minor things like signage, footpaths, Christmas trees, and local art and things, they amount to some discretionary funding for the Te Puke Community Board of something like 11,000. I have some figures here from the Western Bay. The cost of running the community boards of the entire bay is $441,519. That's the cost of their local democracy from that point of view. The discretionary spending that they have amounts to $48,760, sort of 11% or so of the funding. So they're very expensive, very restrictive in the way they operate. But what's been missing, I think, in the debate today is the role of the individual groups, the ratepayer groups, the industry groups, the churches, the iwi, all of those little groups that submit directly to council. When you sit around the council table, as I have on many occasions, you have an annual plan or whatever, it's not just the community boards that are reporting. It's a lot of other individuals groups. That's the way our democracy works. As an example, there was a local protest issue arose about road concerning the Tauranga City Council building a pipeline down our road, causing disruption and detours and what have you. And a lot of dissension arose around the neighbourhood, and I was called in by Tauranga City Council to chair a meeting of 80 to 100 people up at one of the pack houses and report back to Tauranga City Council and our council on the suggestions for improvement. Was the community board involved? No, it wasn't. So these things happen in spite of the in spite of community boards. Life goes on. So, you could argue that we don't need community boards, but I think they certainly do have a role, and I'm supporting that role. But I think that we are neglecting on the debate so far about the role of individual people submitting to council. And they, of course, the leaders of the communities aren't always wanting to be on the board, on a community board, and go through restricted meeting procedures and so on. So I think it attracts the right people. The council hears their voice, and this new setup would, I think, create an opportunity for a more united voice for the eastern area, as the same for the Kaimai area, as the same for the Waihi Beach Katikati area. So basically, that's my suggestion. I don't know whether you want to pursue that. I did support the Māori ward proposal.
Yep.
Okay. Going through that and enlarging on that, though, I'm challenged, like many people, that choosing representatives on a racial basis is a bit awkward for some. I just wonder where we're heading with some of that, and it puts me personally in a situation that my wife and my children have different voting options to the ones that I have.
Right.
So that's quite challenging. But I do think that there has been an absence of a Māori voice around the council in the past, and and I think that it would be quite helpful to have one, even though they will have one heck of a job trying to elicit views from 11 different iwi and 74 different hapu of our area. It's quite a challenge, but I think overall, I was on the Māori Liaison Committee on my time in council, and here trying to elicit one Māori voice or trying to get decisions made was very, very challenging because of the number of people involved. But anyway, okay, that's basically where I am. I do support the council proposal.
Brilliant. Thank you for those observations. You made a comment around the budget. You mentioned a 400,000 plus figure for a community board with an and they distributed $11,000. $11,000, did you say?
Sorry, Te Puke has $11,000 discretionary. The total for the district is
right. That's better.
48,700.
Yeah, got it. Okay, that's the point of clarity I needed there. Thank you. I'll come back in a minute. I'll just go to Commissioner Bigham.
Right, kia ora. Thank you, Michael. I asked the previous submitter why disparate communities of interest or different communities of interest couldn't be brought together to work cohesively. You are saying that they can. Why do you think that they can? What do you see in the communities in the Western Bay? Why do you have faith in their ability to work together under the three community board model when others, the previous submitter and other community boards don't? What's the difference?
I think it's just a personal approach. I don't believe that we are so different. I know we've come from different backgrounds and so on, but ultimately we want to build a better community together. And that's what I feed into. That's what I want to do. I mean, you know, rather than dividing us off, going and hiding away in different corners, I would much rather see us join together. And I would personally work towards that, and I have faith in other people to do the same.
Kia ora. Thank you, Michael.
Commissioner Ball, you okay?
I'm fine, thank you.
Radio. So in your submission, you talked about there are more efficient, effective, inclusive, and better value options to provide for local interest stakeholders and ratepayer groups such as the Pukehina ratepayers or federated farmers can be a strong influence in council and could be resourced further to increase their effectiveness. Who would you consider would be resourcing them?
Well, I think it would be conceivable that council could facilitate sort of more meetings and so on. I'm not suggesting that lots of money should go that way. I think it works pretty well currently, but I think if we put our mind to strengthening local democracy, maybe you could open the purse strings somewhere. But I think people, you know, who want to speak up, they don't need money so much as just to be heard.
Okay, right. I think I've got a fair handle on that, Michael. Thank you very much for the observations that you've made. Appreciate the effort that you've put in, and clearly respect the historical involvement you've had in serving your community. Well done.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Kia
ora. So look, I suspect we all need a little bit of a break. So if it's 7:27. So can we come back at a 7:27? My gosh, 2:27. Can we come back at 2:40? 20 to 3. Okay. So cut off screens and mics. Ali's got control of the rest of it, and we'll just take a break and come back at 20 to 3, and we'll go straight up with Alan Goodyear. Thank you.